everyone, my name is Jennifer Maker. Welcome to the Mandala Magic Design Workshop, an in-depth introduction to designing custom layered paper artwork. Mandalas, as this style of craft is commonly known to many of us, are one of the most popular projects in the crafting world. I've designed many myself. You can see we've got them out here. And I see so many of them for sale on Etsy and other sites. The beauty of the mandala is how your cutting machine does most of the hard work for you. You just have to have a good digital design. The cutting machine then follows the instructions in the design and cuts out the shapes and figures from the cardstock or whatever you're using, right? Once all the pieces are cut out, they can be arranged into a more intricate design. The result is something truly unique that looks like it took hours, days, weeks to make, but actually really only takes a few minutes. Well, it depends on how intricate your design is. The biggest challenge when it comes to mandalas and other layered paper artwork lies in customizing them to your needs. If you're lucky, you already like the designs that other people have made and you can just use them. But what do you do when you can't find a design that's right for your decor or that event you're holding or that person that you want to give a special gift to? Well, you can design it yourself. Now, most designers have kept their techniques to themselves, preferring just to share or sell the finished designs rather than teach people how to make the designs on their own. But it is entirely possible to learn how to do this, absolutely. Some techniques are more complicated than others, it's true, but I know of a technique that is not difficult and anyone can do, and that is the offset technique. So you've all seen this technique before, the floral heart. You've seen this before, right? This is a phenomenally popular design. It's been made tens of thousands of times, and it's created with a variation of the offset technique that we'll talk about in our tips and tricks. But imagine being able to design something like this with your own ideas, shapes, and themes. It will blow yourself away and everyone else who sees it. So I'm really excited to show you how to design your own layered paper artwork. I'm going to show you how to make a paper mandala using the offset technique. First, we're going to do it in Cricut Design Space, totally free for everyone to use, using the weld and slice and of course offset features to create a simple mandala design. Next, we'll use the free Inkscape software to create a slightly more complex mandala design from start to finish. And finally, we'll use the industry standard Adobe Illustrator to make a more challenging mandala design from start to finish. Adobe Illustrator is what I normally use, but we're going to do the whole range so everyone can do this. And then I'm going to show you how to cut and assemble your layered paper artwork using different types of adhesive, right? So that you can use what's appropriate for yourself and your shadow box. And you're going to be amazed at the custom designs that you can make with this technique. Now, before we get started, I want to remind you that your screen might not always look exactly like mine. There are so many variables between different computers, operating systems, and software setup, and I can't capture them all. And software does get updated, so even if yours matches right now, it might not in a few months. And of course, you have access to this workshop indefinitely, right? Forever, really. If you download the file, it's forever. So please use my screen as a general guide and then take some time to get comfortable with your version. Learning new or updated software can be a challenge, but you can totally do it. And remember, there's always help available. If you ever get confused, just come ask for assistance in our workshop area and we will get you right back on track. All right, so I think it's time to dive right in. And in our first lesson, we're going to start at the very beginning and learn all about mandalas. Lesson 1, the magic of mandalas. First, let's talk about what is meant by mandala in the crafting world. A traditional mandala literally means a circle in Sanskrit, and it's typically a geometric configuration of symbols that represent the spiritual journey, starting from the outside to the inner core through layers. But in the world of crafting, a mandala really just means a geometric configuration of symbols, and usually it also means a layered design. So we're not making traditional mandalas, no, but rather intricate designs. Because mandalas are so popular, there are a wide variety of styles and techniques. In this workshop, I will focus on the offset method, which you can use to create geometric designs with lots of layers and fascinating depth. The mandala layers we create using this method will be based off of our initial mandala design. Each layer's elements will be offset from the layer above it, creating a layer design where the inner cutouts become enclosed more and more until we get to our base layer, our original mandala shape without any cutouts. For all the mandalas I'm going to demonstrate, you'll need to start with a shape with an outline layer in which the lines are complete and unbroken around the entire shape. Your shape will also need to have a large empty space inside where your mandala designs can go. Any inner elements will need to be connected to your shape's outline so they stay attached to your mandala when you cut it out. I'm going to explain all of this as we go along, as well as plenty of tips and tricks to help you create beautiful mandalas. So let's get started. Lesson 2, How to Make Mandalas in Cricut Design Space. You might already be familiar with Cricut Design Space, and you can use it to design your mandala with simple tools in just a few steps. If you're new to using Cricut Design Space, you can download and install it free at design.cricut.com. Step 1. Find or create your mandala's outline shape. Let's begin with an easy paper mandala. Open Cricut Design Space and start a new canvas. First, you'll need to find a shape with an outline that you can use for your mandala's basic shape. There are lots of free shapes and images that will work, but filtering for free, cut only, and single layer options definitely help. For this style, you need a shape with lots of open space and a solid edge to create an outline. The patterns we add later will keep the shape intact during cutting. The basic shapes work, but you can also try ones with more detail. But I want to make a letter here. Initials work really well with this technique as long as you pick a font that also has a solid edge and space for patterns. So let's find some options. Click the text icon on the left and type your letter. I'll use a capital letter M for Maker. And don't worry if you want to use the letter A or another letter with a counter. The counter is that floating shape in the middle. I'll show you how to work with those in just a bit. Now there's a nice solid edge using the font Cricut Sans, but let's look at some other options. A bold, chunky style will have more space for patterns inside, so that's what we're looking for. Click the font drop-down menu at the top of your window, and make sure you can still see your letter on your canvas too. If you want to use a Cricut font, stay in this section that says Cricut Fonts and use the filters to narrow down your choices. Picking single layer cutting and free is a great start. You can pick font names or search for them in the top field. Chunky brings up some awesome options, but remember to steer clear of fonts with thin details. I really love playing with fonts, so if you want to learn more about some of my favorites, check out my tips on finding fonts over at jennifermaker.com/Cricut Fonts List. In this workshop, I'm going to use Arial Black, which comes on most computers. Now, Arial Black is not a Cricut font, so you'll want to click System and then search for it. Now, with the lock icon closed, adjust the letter to the size you want. I'm using 8.5 by 11 inch paper, so I'll change my height to 8 inches. You can always adjust your size more if needed. Just make sure this layer will fit your paper with at least 1/2 inch to spare in each direction. Remember, we need open space inside the letter, so let's create some. Click Offset to add a new basic cut line around the letter in the same shape. Set the distance to at least 0.15 inches to make it sturdy enough to cut and assemble. I'll use 0.25 inches with round corners and then click Apply. A new layer named Offset will appear in your Layers panel. It's just a bit larger than your original letter, but it isn't an outline quite yet. It's perfectly aligned, so don't move it, but I'll shift mine to show that it's filled in too. If yours gets moved, just select both and use Center Align to get them back in place. Now I like to make a duplicate of both parts and move them to the side just in case I need them later. Then hold the Shift key on your keyboard to select the original letter and the offset, and then click Slice. 3 slice results will appear in the Layers panel. You won't need the 2 filled-in letters, so delete those. You should be left with an outline of your letter that looks similar to mine. That will be the mandala outline. Step 2, find or create patterns to fill the inside of your mandala. Now for the details. There are lots of free shapes and pattern options in Cricut Design Space that we can use. To see some, click the Images icon. Then click Browse All Images. Try typing pattern into the search bar for some fun options. Not all of these will work though. To identify easy-to-use shapes and images, check the filter boxes for Free, Cut Only under Operation Type, and Single under Layers. Then only pick shapes or patterns with connected elements. Any floating parts will be cut as another piece, so they won't easily work in a layered mandala. For example, this hexagon pattern and the floral pattern are pretty, but the disconnected pieces will not work for us. If you want to start with some easy shapes I used, upload the SVG titled Mandala Magic Shapes and add it to your canvas. Zoom out to see all the options. I'll start with the 2 designs at the left. Click Ungroup and delete the others. First, let's change the color of our letter outline so it's easier to see against the patterns. With your letter selected, click the color swatch in the top menu next to Operation and choose a new color. I'll make mine red. Now you can fill the outline with the designs by dragging, duplicating, and adjusting them as needed. The goal is to make all the edges touch and enjoy the look. I'm going to duplicate the smaller pattern and place one in each top corner. Then I'll move and resize the bigger pattern to fill the rest. It's okay if you have elements that go outside the edge of your outline. We'll deal with those in a minute. If your shape has an important section in the middle, like the counter for a letter, make sure it connects to the designs too. Once you have your patterns arranged how you'd like, select your outline shape and your patterns and duplicate them to save a copy. Find the copy of the filled-in letter shape and change its color so it's different than the design. I'll use blue. Move them off to the side. Select all the pattern pieces you're using to fill in your mandala, but not the outline. Then click Combine and select Weld. You should now have one connected pattern. Make sure everything looks right. Now select your original outline layer and click Contour. Click Hide All Contours at the bottom of the pop-up window, and then click the X in the top right to close the window. You can use the filled-in letter to get rid of the excess pattern pieces. To do this, duplicate the filled-in letter, but not the original letter shape, and move the copy to the side. Select both your combined patterns and your filled-in letter right below it. Then click Slice. 4 slice results will appear in the Layers panel. Delete the layer with the outside pattern pieces. Of the 3 that are left, 2 are the same. Keep one and delete the other. Also, delete the one with unconnected pieces inside the letter shape. Your remaining pattern layer should look similar to mine. Now select the outline you copied earlier and your remaining pattern layer. Choose Align and Center to line them up. Again, duplicate your outline layer and move the copy to the side just in case you need it. Select your aligned pattern and original outline layers, and then click Combine and select Weld. You should now have a single layer with your mandala design. Make sure you're happy with how it looks before moving on to the next step. If something looks off, just click the Undo button and adjust your design as needed before welding again. If you like the result, but there are any really tiny cut pieces, open the Contour tool and click the shapes to remove them. Make sure the letter shape is behind the mandala by selecting it, and then clicking Arrange and Send to Back. Select both and center align the layers. Now you have a simple, layered mandala letter. Step 3. Create more mandala layers using the Offset tool. 2 layers are nice, but we can create more using the Offset tool. The number you can add depends on your design and preference, but here's how I decide. First, double-click your welded mandala design in the Layers panel and rename it Layer 1. Naming the layers will help keep everything organized. Then, click Offset. Adjust the distance and corner style like we did earlier. This time, it can be smaller since we're adding thickness to an existing shape. I'll try 0.1 inches with round corners to see how that looks, and then click Apply. The new offset layer shows up in the Layers panel, so rename it to Layer 2. Since the new layer is black, you can really see how much of the negative space has been filled, especially in the small cutouts. Some of mine are already filled in. That's okay, it just means you won't see every color in some spots. If you want to see all the colors in each spot, try making another design with larger cutout areas, or use a thinner offset. If you don't like the result, remember that you can always go back a few steps to use a different approach. I think I can create 2 more, including the solid back layer that will be 5 layers, which is a great number of layers. I like mine this way, so I'll keep going. Change the layers' colors to get a better idea of your result. I'll make Layer 1 red and Layer 2 orange. Now select Layer 2 and click Offset again. Consistency looks best in layered mandala designs, so I'll use the same settings. Click Apply to create a new offset layer. If you're happy with how it looks, rename it Layer 3 and change its color. I'll go with yellow for this one to stick with the rainbow theme. Repeat the same steps to create 2 more offset layers. Remember to select the newest layer for each offset so the new layer will be thicker and everything will line up. Change the colors of your layers too. I made my last 2 green and blue. Name them Layer 4 and Layer 5 respectively. The last layer, that's Layer 5 for me, needs to be solid. Select it and click Contour, and then click Hide All Contours at the bottom of the pop-up window. If it's grayed out, the layer is already solid and you don't have to do anything. Then click the X in the pop-up to close it. Check your middle 3 layers to make sure they don't have any tiny holes that your machine might struggle to cut. You can check for these by hiding your top and bottom layers with the eye icon in the Layers panel. Then hide all of your inner layers except one. Zoom in really closely and look for any tiny cutouts, ones that are less than 1/16 of an inch, and remove them using the Contour button, just like we did before with Layer 1. Repeat this process for the rest of your inner layers, checking them one at a time. You can use the outline of your shape or letter, the one that you duplicated earlier, as an additional top layer for your mandala to help accentuate the overall shape of your design. Just select your duplicate outline and bring it to the top of your layers by going to Arrange, Bring to Front. Then select all of your mandala layers and align them by going to Align, Center. And don't forget to save your design when you're done. If this is the way you'll design your mandala, join me in Lesson 5 to prepare the layers for cutting. But if you'd like to learn how to make this in Inkscape, go on to Lesson 3. Lesson 4, How to Make Mandalas in Adobe Illustrator. Adobe Illustrator is a vector-based illustration program offered for a monthly price via adobe.com. You can try it free for 7 days by going to adobe.com/illustrator. It is not inexpensive, but it is the industry standard. It's also what I personally use to create SVGs. Illustrator is very powerful, so I'll show you how to create a more involved mandala using it on my Mac. It's actually quite simple once you get the hang of it, and even though I'm on my Mac, it'll look very similar to Windows, so don't worry about that. Let me walk you through the steps. Once you have Adobe Illustrator installed, open it and then go to the File menu at the top and select New. You can create any size document, but for now, let's use the default letter size template under the Print section. Select it and click Create. There are lots of ways to access common tools in Adobe Illustrator, so let's all make our screens look the same for now. Just click Window at the top, select Workspace, and choose Essentials. This view has most of what we need. It's also helpful to make sure your bounding boxes are showing under the View menu. When they're showing, it will say Hide Bounding Box in the menu. You can also change your dimensions to inches by going to the Illustrator menu and then Units at the top. Next to General, choose Inches from the drop-down and then click OK in the bottom right. Step 1. Upload or create your mandala's outline shape. First, you need a shape to create the main design. I've included some for you in the workshop area, so try the process with one of mine first before making your own. If you want to create your own outline shape, refer to Step 2 where we create a leaf-shaped outline for the inside of our mandala. Now go to the File menu at the top of your screen and choose Open. Navigate to the SVG titled Mandala Magic Shapes. Select it and click Open. If an Open from Creative Cloud window appears, click on the On Your Computer button at the bottom of that window to switch to your local file system. Then navigate to the folder where you saved the SVG file. The file will open in a tab or window next to the document we created. I'm going to use the butterfly shape in the center. Select it and a blue bounding box will appear around it. Go to the Edit menu at the top and choose Copy. We'll come back to this document, so don't close it. Go back to your blank document and then go to Edit and choose Paste. The butterfly outline should now be in the center of your artboard. I've already sized this shape to fit nicely on a letter-sized sheet of paper, but you can resize it to be larger or smaller if you'd like. When resizing your shape or uploading one from a file, make sure the outline is thick enough that you can cut it out of paper and assemble it without it ripping. At least 0.15 inches wide is the best. You can check your outline's thickness by creating a rectangle shape that is roughly the width of your outline, and then checking the width of that rectangle in the top menu under the Transform section. If it's less than 0.15 inches wide, enlarge your mandala shape until the outline is thick enough, and then delete the reference rectangle, and you're ready. I'm going to make my butterfly just a little smaller so the wings fit on a letter-size portrait orientation artboard. If you're using any paper with a directional pattern on it for your mandala's layers, it's a good idea to resize your mandala outline to fit within a portrait-sized artboard as well. To do this, change your width to 8 inches in the top menu. Type 8 into the width field and make sure the link icon in between the width and height fields is selected. This will lock and maintain your proportions when scaling the shape. Then press Enter or Return on your keyboard to change the size. And here's a tip. When the proportions aren't locked, the icon will look like an oval with a diagonal line through it. Now this made my butterfly's height about 6.6 inches, which fits nicely on the artboard. You can always adjust your size later if needed. The mandala will be easier to work with if the shape is centered on the artboard. If it isn't, click on it to select it, go to the Object menu at the top, and then choose Align and Horizontal Align Center. Using the Object menu to pick Align and Vertical Align Center so it's right in the middle. Your mandala's outline is now ready to use. But first, save your work. Go to the File menu, choose Save As, and pick a location you'll remember on your computer. Since this design is still in process, I'll rename it Butterfly Mandala Start and save it as an Illustrator or AI file. We can save the final design in a format that will work with our cutting method when we're ready. Step 2, upload or create patterns to fill the inside of your mandala. Now let's add the details. You can use shapes or patterns you've downloaded. Just be sure the files are vector-based, like SVG, EPS, or AI formats. I'll show you how with elements from the shapes SVG that we already opened. So go to the document where we copied the butterfly. Zoom out if you can't see the whole artboard. You can try different combinations, but I'm going to use some of the flower shapes. Hold down your Shift key to select your choices, then go to the Edit menu and choose Copy. Click back on your design in progress and go to the Edit menu and choose Paste to add the new elements. Drag them to the side and zoom out if you need to. Now move the designs inside the outline to fill the blank space. I'll work from the wings in, but the look is up to you. You can duplicate any of the flowers if you'd like to use more than one of them. I'm going to duplicate the rose and place one in the lower right wing of the butterfly and the other in the upper left wing. Remember, you can duplicate an item by going to the Edit menu and choosing Copy, and then going back to Edit and choosing Paste. You can even mirror an object by using the Reflect function. Just select the object. I'll use the top left rose as an example, and go to the Object menu, choose Transform, and select Reflect. If you leave the vertical option selected under Axis, it will flip your object on its vertical axis. So instead of the rose facing left, it will now face right. It's okay if the elements go outside the main outline because we'll fix that later. But make sure their edges touch the outline and each other. Then I'll choose two of the other flower shapes and place one in each of the remaining wings to help give my design a balanced look. The really simple flower is too small to touch the other parts easily. To resize it and create some overlap, click on the object with your selection tool and then drag in or out from a corner of the bounding box when you see a straight arrow icon appear. To constrain the proportions, hold the Shift key on your keyboard while dragging. Keep the design consistent and don't make the elements so big or so small that the lines are very different widths. Illustrator makes it really easy to adjust the elements. So to fill the bottom wing a bit more, click on the flower and then move your cursor close to a corner of the bounding box until a curved double arrow shows up. That means the Rotate tool is active. Click and drag to either side to rotate the element a bit. That's awesome and helpful, right? Sometimes you'll end up with an awkwardly shaped section that needs to be filled, like the middle here and the wingtips. We can make shapes to fit these. I'm going to try to make a leaf, but you can use these steps to play and make your own designs. There are many, many ways to make shapes in Illustrator, but using simple shapes and the Pathfinder tool is a good way to start. It lets us use similar tools like Slice and Weld from Cricut Design Space, if you're familiar with those. Now the Shape tool on the left might look different depending on which shape was last used. Click and hold to pop out your options. I'll pick the ellipse since I want a leaf with curves. Next to your artboard, click and hold to drag an oval. If you drag your cursor horizontally or vertically, you can change the shape. Holding the Shift key will make it a circle. I want an oval that is pretty tall, so I'll release the button when it looks good. Since we want to use the Pathfinder tool, the shape should be filled in but not have a stroke. The stroke refers to the thickness of the line. So look at the overlapping boxes at the left. The solid one is the fill color and the outlined one is the stroke. Click the solid color to set the oval's fill. I'll stick with black. Then click the stroke square and make sure that the white box with a red line is selected below. That means there is no stroke. With the oval still selected, use Copy and Paste to create a duplicate. Move one so it overlaps the other. Drag a bounding box around both shapes so you can see their overlapped area in the center. It looks like a leaf shape, right? I want a very even shape, so under the Objects menu, I'll use the Align and Vertical Align Top options to line them up. Again, there's a lot we can do with these shapes, but for now, click Window at the top and choose Pathfinder. With both ovals selected, you can see options under Shape Modes in the Pathfinder window. Each will create a different result, but I'll use Intersect. It's the third from the left and looks like two white squares with their center overlap sections in black. Click it to remove all of the selected pieces outside of where your two shapes intersect with each other. There is the leaf shape. Your remaining shape should look similar to mine. Resize it if needed. I made mine 0.5 inches wide. But it's a solid shape and we need an outline to match the rest of our pattern. Remember the fill and stroke squares? Keep the shape selected and then hover over the curved line with the arrows at both ends next to the squares. It should say swap fill and stroke. Click the arrow and, like magic, the fill is now gone and the stroke is black. It's an outline. But remember, we want all of the outlines to be consistent width, and this definitely isn't. Now open your stroke window by going to the window menu and choosing stroke. Increase the width of your stroke using the up arrow next to 1 pt, which means 1 point, until it's about the same thickness as the lines in your flower shape. I made mine 10 points. Finally, see the blue line in the middle of the stroke on the leaf? If you click on one of the other shapes, you can see that it looks different and has a blue line on either side of the outline. If you're using a cutting machine, the blade will follow the blue lines. So we need to adjust the leaf to cut on the sides as a shape. With the leaf selected, go to the Object menu, select Path, and then choose Outline Stroke. Now it will work just like any other shape. Duplicate it as many times as you'd like to fill in the rest of your mandala pattern. The rotate tool is really helpful here. Have fun and experiment. And remember, you can always use edit and undo to try again. Once you have your shapes arranged how you'd like, select your outline shape, that's the butterfly, and your fill shapes, that's the flower and the leaves, and make a copy of them. Move the copies off to the side of your artboard. We'll use the duplicate outline later and might need the other parts. Back in the main design, select all of the shapes in the pattern, but not the outline. If you have trouble selecting just the shapes on your artboard, you can always select them from the Layers window instead. Just go to the Window menu and choose Layers at the top to open the window. In your Layers window, click on the arrow to the left of the words Layer 1 to expand the layer and reveal all of the separate elements on your artboard as separate layers in the window. When you select an object, it should highlight that layer in the Layers window with a colored square to the right of it. When selecting your pattern shapes, just make sure the butterfly outline does not have a colored square next to it in the Layers window. When you have it correct, all of the pattern shapes on your artboard should have blue outlines, but the butterfly won't. Find your Pathfinder window again and click the first icon on the left under Shapes mode. It looks like two squares welded together and says Unite when you hover over it. Now your inner elements are all one piece. When you select your United Flower pattern, it should highlight that layer in the Layers window with a colored square to the right of it. Now to get rid of the patterns outside the outline. Select your mandala's outline layer, the butterfly, and go to Object, choose Compound Path, and pick Release. Your butterfly shape will look filled in. Don't worry, remember that we have a backup. But see the blue line that still looks like the outline? The result won't work if we use this to edit the pattern. We need the whole shape as one piece. Click inside the butterfly to select just the small version using the Layers window, and then delete it. Select both your inner pattern and the filled-in butterfly. In your Pathfinder window, select Intersect to remove all of the selected pieces where the shapes don't intersect. Now it looks like the pattern pieces that go inside the outline. We need the outline, so move the copy from earlier back onto your artboard. Align its edges to the edges of your pattern. Zoom in if you need to by clicking View and then choose Zoom in. Make sure you don't have any little bits of the pattern beyond the butterfly shape. Now to put it all together. Again, duplicate your outline layer and move the copy to the side for safekeeping. Select both the pattern and original outline layers. And then in the Pathfinder window, click Unite, and it's the first option under Shape Modes. You should now have a single layer with your mandala design. Make sure you're happy with how it looks before moving on to the next step. If you zoom in and see any jagged edges around the outside of your design from some pattern pieces that didn't get lined up quite right, they're easy to fix. Just zoom in really close and look for the points or nodes that extend past your outline. You can use the pen tool, which looks like the tip of a fountain pen in the toolbar on the left, to select and delete them. Hover over the node you want to delete until you see a minus sign appear next to the pen icon. Then click on the node to delete it. Do this for any extra nodes that extend past the outer edge of your mandala's shape. Now it will cut much easier. If something looks off, just go up to the Edit menu and choose Undo, and adjust your design as needed before uniting again. Really tiny holes in this layer will be tough to cut and not add a lot to the design. I like to use the Direct Selection tool, that's the white arrow, to click the small part so just it is selected. Clicking Delete once will remove one node on the shape. Hit Delete again to delete the rest of it. Step 3, create more mandala layers using the Offset Path function. Once you're happy with your main mandala design, you can create additional layers with the Offset Path function in Illustrator. First, select your combined mandala layer. Rename it Layer 1 in your Layers window by double-clicking the layer and typing the new name into the text field. Press the Enter or Return key on your keyboard or click somewhere else to apply the change. Now we know the original. Decide how many layers you want your mandala to have. I think 5 layers would work really well. The last layer will be solid, but each of the 3 layers in between should have cutouts that are incrementally smaller than the one before it. Go to the Object menu, choose Path, and choose Offset Path. Here you can adjust the distance or offset and the corner shape, also known as joins, of your new line. I'm going to try making the offset distance on my first additional layer 0.07 inches. Going any smaller than that for a mandala of this size will make the layers hard to tell apart. I'll go with round joins. You can leave the miter limit at the default value of 4. Click the preview box if you want to see what it looks like before applying your selections. If you're happy with the result, click OK to close the window. If not, slightly adjust the offset and try again. A new layer will appear in your Layers window. It should be just a bit larger than your original shape. Rename the new layer Layer 2 and change its color to something else by double-clicking on the color swatch in the Tools menu on the left. I'll choose orange and then click OK to apply the color. You can also change the color of Layer 1 if you'd like. I'll make mine red. Now select Layer 2. If you're having trouble selecting it on your artboard, you can select it in your Layers window by clicking on the little circle to the right of the layer in the list until you see a colored square appear next to it. A bounding box also appears around the shape on your artboard. Go to the Object menu, choose Path, and choose Offset Path again. Use the same settings as before if you want your next layer to match, which I do recommend. Click OK to create a new layer in your Layers window. If you're happy with how it looks, rename it Layer 3 and change its color. I'll go with yellow for this one to stick with a rainbow theme. Repeat the same steps to create 2 more offset layers. Name them Layer 4 and Layer 5 respectively. Make sure you select your most recent layer each time you create an offset. This way, the following layer will be thicker than the last and all your layers will align with each other very nicely. Change the colors of your layers so they're all different from one another. This will make it easier to see your offsets. I made my last 2 layers green and blue. For your last layer, Layer 5, you'll want to remove any cutouts from the center so the back of your mandala is one solid piece. Select Layers 1 through 4 and hide them by going to the Object menu, choose Hide, and then choose Selection. You should now see layer 5 all by itself on your artboard. Select it and go to the Object menu, choose Compound Path, and select Release. Your shape should now be filled in, but you still need to get rid of all the little pieces from the cutouts we removed. Select your filled in layer 5 shape and hide it as well. Click and drag a bounding box around all the leftover pieces on your artboard, then use your Delete key to remove them. Now you can show all your layers again by going to the Object menu and selecting Show All. You may need to rename your bottom layer, Layer 5 again. Make sure you're happy with the overall look of your mandala. If you want to make any of your offsets thicker or thinner, you can go back and experiment with the offset distance and repeat the steps above until you're happy with the results. Also check that you don't have any tiny holes inside any of your middle layers that your machine might struggle to cut. If you do, just remove them using your direct selection tool like we did before with layer 1. And you can use the outline of your shape, the one that you duplicated earlier, as an additional top layer for your mandala to help accentuate the overall shape of your mandala. I'll make mine dark red and center align it with my other layers. It's a good idea to save your file now while you have everything intact. If you'd like to mount your finished mandala inside a shadow box, but would like to have a paper frame surrounding it, it's easy to do. Let me show you how. First, measure the inside of your shadow box frame so you know how big your paper border should be. Use a ruler or measuring tape to measure from inside one edge of the frame to inside the opposite edge. Do this for both directions so you know how wide and how tall the space you have is. My 12 by 12 inch shadow box has an inner frame that's about 10.7 inches in both directions. In order to make sure your paper layers fit nicely into your frame without getting stuck on the edges, it's best to make them a bit smaller than your actual frame. I'll make mine 0.1 inches smaller in both directions, so I'll need a paper frame that is 10.6 inches by 10.6 inches. Make sure you have paper larger than the dimension you need. Once you have your dimensions for the paper frame, create a square or rectangle with those dimensions using the rectangle tool. Remember, you can find it in the same place as the ellipse tool in the Tools menu. Select your new shape and your mandala layers and go to the Object menu, choose Align, and choose Vertical Align Center. Now make 4 copies of your frame shape for the other 4 layers of your mandala, or however many you need. Make sure the new rectangles are center aligned with everything else. You can choose from the Edit menu and pick Paste in Place to paste your object in the exact same position to save time with alignment. You won't need the additional top outline layer for this type of mandala. We'll only be using the layers with patterns in the center, so you can move your top outline layer off to the side or delete it for this. Select your frame shapes and hide them for now. Hide all of your mandala layers except for one as well. I'll use the top layer. You should be left with a single mandala layer. Select that layer and go to the Object menu, choose Compound Path, and select Release. It should look like you have just a filled-in butterfly shape, similar to when we released the compound path before. However, it's the invisible cutout shapes that we want to keep this time. Select the main butterfly shape and delete it. You should be left with a bunch of small shape pieces that roughly form the shape of a butterfly. We'll use these to make cutouts in our frame shape. Go to your Layers window and click on the very left of one of your frame layers. An eye icon should appear, making the layer visible on your artboard. Without moving anything, select your shape and choose the Object menu, pick Arrange and choose Bring to Front. Click and drag a bounding box around your frame and the cutout shapes in the center. Again, make sure you don't move anything. It's very important that all the elements stay in their exact positions. Open your Pathfinder window and select the very last button on the bottom row under Pathfinders. It should say -back when you hover over it. Now you should have a frame with your butterfly shape pattern cut out of the center. Hide that layer for now. Go to your Layers window and find your next mandala layer. Click the eye icon to show it and repeat the same steps as above to release its compound path. Delete the outer butterfly shape and slice the remaining shapes out of the center of the next frame shape. Do this for all of your mandala layers, making sure you don't move any pieces on your artboard during the process. If you accidentally move something, just go to the Edit menu and choose Undo until you've reached a previous point where all elements are in their original positions. When you're finished cutting out all of your butterfly patterns from each frame, go to the Object menu, choose Show All to make all of your layers visible. Make sure your very back layer is just a plain frame shape if you don't want the back of your shadow box to show through your layers. In order to make each layer easier to see on your artboard, you can change their colors. I made my top layer white, my plain rectangle at the back dark teal, and the layers in between different shades of teal. You can use your Layers window to select and arrange each layer to make sure they're in just the right order for cutting. Also, size your artboard to fit your new frame size by selecting everything and going to the Object menu, and then Artboards, and then Fit to Selected Art. Your new frame mandala layers should look similar to mine. Make sure you're happy with the overall design and adjust anything you want to change. And then be sure to save your work. Step 4. Save as an SVG file for use with your cutting machine. To cut your mandala design with a cutting machine, like a Cricut and Cricut Design Space, you'll need to create an SVG file from your Illustrator document. Check your Layers window to make sure you only have 5 layers, or the number of layers that you're using in your mandala. If you see anything extra that doesn't belong, delete it before saving. Also, make sure you don't have any grouped objects. Each layer should be in its own separate path. Then go to the File menu and choose Save As. In the Format drop-down menu at the bottom, choose SVG and give your file a name you'll remember. I'll use Butterfly Mandala Final. In the SVG Options window, choose SVG 1.0 next to SVG Profiles and make sure the type says SVG. You can leave the other options on their default settings as long as they match the screen. Click OK to save your file. Your mandala design is now ready to use with your cutting machine. Lesson 5. How to cut and assemble your mandala designs. Now that you've designed a beautiful mandala, it's time to cut it out and see how it all comes together. I'm going to show you how to cut your mandala designs on a Cricut cutting machine. Step 1. Prepare your mandala for cutting. If you design your mandala in Inkscape or Illustrator, you'll first need to upload your SVG file to Cricut Design Space and add it to your canvas. I'll show you with my star design. If you're not sure how to upload an SVG cut file to Cricut Design Space, go to jennifermaker.com/svgs for a helpful video training series. Now you might notice that this star looks different than the one that I demonstrated in Lesson 3. The star from Lesson 3 had a simpler design to make it easier to teach you how to use basic tools and functions in Inkscape. This more detailed star is a good example of how intricate your mandalas can be, and it demonstrates how to apply thin strips of adhesive foam to small areas. You can zoom out to see all of the designs by clicking on the minus sign on the lower left. Before clicking Make It, be sure the size of your mandala will fit inside your frame or in the space where you intend to display it. If you're using a shadow box frame, open the back and measure from inside one edge of the frame to inside the opposite edge. Do this for both directions so you know how wide and how tall the space you have is. If you need to change the size of your mandala, select and center align all of the layers, and then type in the new measurement for the width or height at the top. Make sure the lock icon is closed to maintain your proportions. You'll also want to be sure your mandala layers will fit on the paper size you intend to use. If you're cutting your layers out of 12 by 12 inch cardstock, make sure both of your dimensions, that's width and height, are 11.49 inches or less. If you're using 8.5 by 11 inch cardstock, make sure one of your dimensions is 7.9 inches or less, and the other is 10.49 inches or less. Once your mandala is the right size, it's ready to cut. Step 2, cut your mandala layers. Make sure the correct machine is selected and then click Make It in the upper right corner. On the Prepare screen, your design will appear on different mats based on the colors you chose for each layer. You may have more or less mats than I do, depending on how many layers your mandala has. Make sure the correct material size is selected for each mat. I'm going to use 8.5 by 11 inch cardstock for this design. Then click back on the first mat and select Continue in the lower right. On the Make screen, select the cut settings for each mat. For most of my materials, the cardstock for intricate cut setting worked well on my Cricut Maker 3 cutting machine. To find it, click Browse All Materials and type Intricate in the search bar. Then select the result, click Done, and leave the pressure at default. If you're using a Cricut Explorer Series machine, turn your smart dial to the custom setting first and then follow the same directions. For glitter cardstock, the glitter cardstock setting sometimes works better than the intricate setting. It really depends on the brand. For the back layers without any cutouts, the medium cardstock setting with more pressure can be used, but I found that the intricate cut setting worked for those layers too. If you're using the same cardstock for all your layers and the Remember Material Settings box is available, be sure to check it to save time between cuts. Sometimes papers of the same weight have different textures and will require slightly different settings to cut smoothly. Every machine is different, so you may need to do several test cuts before finding a setting that works best for you. If you run into any issues cutting your materials, check out my Cricut tips and tricks for cleaner cuts over at jennifermaker.com/blades. Place your first mat's cardstock face up on your green standard grip machine mat and use a brayer to make sure it's fully adhered. And check that your fine point blade is clean and in the clamp. Then load the machine mat into your Cricut cutting machine and press the flashing button to begin cutting. When the cut is finished, and before you unload your mat, check to see if the cut went all the way through the cardstock. If it didn't, press that metal button again for another pass. Then unload the mat, flip it over onto your work surface, and roll it back to release the cardstock. This helps prevent the material from curling and ripping. Move slowly and use a spatula to carefully remove any intricate pieces from the mat. You can use your weeding tool to pop out any small pieces of cardstock from the intricate areas of your layers after you've removed them from your mat. And you can use your scraper tool to remove any bits of paper left on your mat after cutting the intricate layers. Repeat the same steps for the rest of your mats. The mats with intricate details will take longer to cut. Here's what the cut pieces for each of my mandalas looks like. Step 3. Assemble your mandala. There are many ways to put the layers together, and the best choice really depends on your design and display goal. If you want to give your design more depth, adhesive foam tape or micro pop dots work well since they're three-dimensional. For designs with very thin lines, micro pop dots work best. They do, however, take more time and patience to apply than other adhesives. If you want to assemble your mandala quickly and aren't concerned with adding depth, craft glue, such as my favorite Barely Art Precision Craft Glue, works the best. Glue can be somewhat messy when using it on very intricate designs, so I recommend only using it to assemble mandalas with thicker lines. Option 1. Adhesive foam tape. Gather your mandala's cut pieces, your adhesive foam squares or strips, and some scissors. You can also use a craft knife and a self-healing mat instead of scissors. I'm going to use foam squares and strips that are 1/8 of an inch tall. Stack the mandala layers face up in the correct order from bottom up. The solid piece will be the bottom layer, and each layer above that will have more cuts than the previous one. The top layer will generally be the most intricate piece. Flip the stack over so you can see the solid back. We'll flip one layer back over at a time to adhere them to each other. Start by flipping the solid back layer over and right side up next to your stack layers on your work surface. Place the foam adhesive squares on the back of the next layer in the stack, the one facing you. Position the squares so they're a few inches apart. Make sure you place some in the center as well as around the outside edge. Remove the paper backing from the adhesive squares on 1/2 of your mandala layer. You can use tweezers or a weeding tool if you're having trouble removing the backings. Flip the layer with the adhesive over so it's right side up. Then gently lower it onto your bottom layer. Use the side with the backing still attached to get everything lined up just right. And looking straight down over your project will help more than viewing the alignment from an angle. When it looks good, press down on the other half to adhere the layers to each other. Gently lift the half with the adhesive backing still attached and carefully remove those backings. The tools can help here. Then press down on that half. Make sure everything looks nice and straight and press the layers together with a bit more pressure to make sure they stay stuck together. Continue with each layer in the same manner, always adding the adhesive to the back of the next layer up. For the upper layers, you might need to trim the adhesive foam squares to make very thin strips so they don't show from the front. Here's what my assembled mandala looks like. If you want to place your mandala inside a shadow box, you can use the same adhesive foam squares to attach it to the back of the frame. Just be sure to use enough adhesive that your mandala doesn't slide around inside the frame after it hangs up for a while. Option 2, adhesive foam micro pop dots. Gather your mandala's cut pieces, adhesive foam micro pop dots, tweezers, and a weeding tool. I use micro pop dots about 1/16 of an inch tall. Stack the mandala layers face up in the correct order from bottom up. The solid piece will be the bottom layer, and each layer above that will have more cuts than the previous one. The top layer will generally be the most intricate piece. Flip the stack over so you can see the solid back. To adhere the layers to each other, we'll flip one layer back over at a time. Start by flipping the solid back layer over and right side up next to your stack layers on your work surface. Using your tweezers, place the micro pop dots on the back of the next layer in the stack. This will be the one facing you. Position the dots so they're a few inches apart. Make sure you place them in the center as well as around the outside edge. It can be difficult to tell which dots have the backing still attached and which don't, so I used a dark pen to mark all of the paper backings before removing them. If the mark is gone, so is the backing. Remove the paper backing from the pop dots on 1/2 of your mandala layer. You can use tweezers or a weeding tool if you're having trouble removing the backings. Flip the layer with the adhesive over so it's right side up. Then gently lower it down onto your bottom layer. Use the half with the backing still attached to get everything lined up just right. Look straight down onto the stack to align the edges of the layers. If you look at it from an angle, it's much more difficult to line the layers up correctly. Then press down gently on the other half to adhere the layers to each other. If you notice that your layers aren't lined up quite right, you can gently lift up the dots to move the layer as long as they aren't completely stuck to the cardstock below. Once you're happy with the layer's placement, gently lift the half with the adhesive backing still attached and carefully remove those backings. Tools will help. Use those tweezers and then press down on that half. Continue with each layer in the same manner, always adding the adhesive to the back of the next layer up. Here's what my assembled mandala looks like. If you want to place your mandala inside a shadow box, you can use a different type of adhesive, such as the adhesive foam squares, to attach it to the back of the frame. Option 3, precision craft glue. Gather your mandala's cut pieces and your glue. Stack the mandala layers in the correct order from bottom up. The solid piece will be the bottom layer, and each layer above that will have more cuts than the previous one. The top layer will generally be the most intricate piece. Flip the stack over so you can see the solid back. To adhere the layers to each other, we'll flip one layer back over at a time. Start by flipping the solid back layer over and right side up next to your stack layers on your work surface. Carefully apply a small amount of glue to the back of the next layer in the stack. This will be the one facing you. I recommend you use the very narrow precision tip when applying this glue. Make sure you apply some glue in the center as well as around the outside edge. You only need to apply enough glue to get the layers to adhere to each other. If you apply too much glue, it could warp your paper as it dries. Flip the layer with the glue over so it's right side up. Then gently lower it down onto your bottom layer. Look straight down onto the stack to align the edges of the layers. If you look at it from an angle, it's much more difficult to get everything to line up properly. And then press down to adhere the layers to each other. If you notice that your layers aren't lined up quite right, you can gently move the layers into position while the glue is still wet. Just make any adjustments quickly as the glue does not take long to set. Continue with each layer in the same manner, always adding the glue to the back of the next layer up. Here's what my assembled mandala looks like. If you want to place your mandala inside a shadow box, you can use a different type of adhesive, such as the adhesive foam squares mentioned earlier, to attach it to the back of the frame. Just be sure to use enough adhesive to make sure your mandala doesn't slide around or slip down after your frame has been hanging up for a while. Step 4, show it off. You are all done. Here's what my finished mandalas look like. Aren't they awesome? Now your mandalas are ready to frame or hang on a wall where everyone can see what you created. I just love how there are so many possibilities with this type of mandala. I can't wait to see the mandalas you create. All right, so let's talk about tips and tricks for creating your layered paper artwork. First, this is a very important one, and you saw me doing this. You want to keep copies as you're working, right? You saw me do this in Cricut Design Space and Inkscape and Illustrator. So keep copies of your mandala separate elements as you go. It can save a lot of extra work later if you need to go back and change something. I like to keep my copies off to the side in case I need them later, and sometimes I change their color or rename them to help keep everything straight. I think of it as sort of a backup to what I'm doing, right? So always, just as you're working, just keep some copies. Yes, you can undo to go back, but then you've lost some of your work, right? Unless you remember to save it. But it's better just to keep that copy as you're working. All right, tip number 2 is determining layers. So ideally, decide how many layers you want your mandala to have before you create your offset layers. For most of the styles that we explored today, the number of layers will affect the thickness of each of your offsets. The more layers you have, the smaller or thinner each of your offsets will need to be. The less layers you have, the larger or thicker each of your offsets will need to be. Remember, your very last layer, the one that's on the bottom, right, should have no cutouts, right? The layers in between should have offsets that enclose the cutouts of your design incrementally. And if you're trying to fit a design in a shadow box, right, because sometimes it can get a little thick, be sure to measure the depth of your shadow box first and then divide that measurement by the depth of your adhesive. That will tell you how many layers will fit. And if your shadow box is really shallow, you may need to use mostly glue or the micro pop dots because they are thinner. Feel free to mix up adhesives too. You can have some layers be glued and then use the adhesive foam on other layers. And then you want to check the thickness of your design's lines as you make changes. They need to be thick enough that you can cut the design out of paper and assemble it without ripping, right? So I suggest making the lines at least 0.15 inches wide. Any thinner and it will be really difficult to remove your layers from your machine mat without ripping. So that means if you have a mandala you made with lines that are thinner than 0.15 inches, you really should use your offset function to make them thicker. You can use this technique to thicken up lines that get too thin after you've resized a mandala design too. So I had someone post about this or ask about this just recently. They had bought a design from Etsy and they resized it to fit their shadow box. And the resize was pretty substantial. And that meant all those lines and those details got really thin. And when she went to cut it out, it was kind of a big mess. So you can use the techniques that you have learned in this workshop to modify other mandalas and layered paper art that you get when you need to resize it, change the number of layers, do all sorts of things. You can just open up those SVGs that you buy, that you share, that other people give you, whatever, in Inkscape or Illustrator, and you can modify the nodes. Right? If you don't have Inkscape or Illustrator and you're relying on Cricut Design Space, you can add offsets to things to make things thicker so they're not crazy to cut out. This is really, really powerful. It really extends your ability to make all the things. When I first was learning to create SVGs, I simply opened up other people's files that have been made and shared freely. And I'm like, well, I can see everything. Everything is right there. So you should feel free to open up an SVG created by others, whether it's me or someone else, and look at it in Inkscape or Illustrator and feel free to change it, right? Like, you can always change my things. I want you to build off of what I teach you. It's important to me that you take what I did and go further, right? That's how the world works. That's how we do amazing things. That's how we have the technology that we have, is that we take what a person has done and then we build upon it. All right. And then for my Mac users, if you're designing on a Mac, your Inkscape screen might look different than mine. It's not currently supporting Ventura, as I mentioned earlier. Hopefully it will be fixed soon after this workshop premieres, but some Mac users running the Ventura operating system might have interface issues where things don't look right or the mouse events don't perform right. There's a conflict between some software and changes in the newer operating system. So if you have a Mac on OS Ventura and are having problems with Inkscape for this workshop, use Cricut Design Space or Adobe Illustrator instead, or wait until they fix it and then update it. All right, and now I want to share a variation on the offset technique. The variation produces a sort of infinite mirror design like what you see in the floral heart design. So let's actually take a look at, I have it down here. Let's take a look at that so you can see what I mean. So here is the floral heart design. So you can see how it has the offsets that I taught you, but the offsets go inward as if there's a point, back here underneath it, and it's all kind of pulling in, right? So it reminds me of like the infinite mirror. And given how popular this design was, I thought you all might like to learn how to make this too. It uses the same techniques I just taught you, but with a little extra. You're going to actually have to modify some nodes. It could be quite relaxing once you get the hang of it. It could be fun to do. So we're going to do a live demonstration. We're not going to do this full design. I'm going to do a rose from here so you can see how it works. And then you can apply it to all of your own projects. So we're going to go over to Adobe Illustrator. So give me a second to get over there. There we go. So this is actually our workshop area. All right. And I'm going to demonstrate this in Adobe Illustrator because this is the software I use most of the time. This is what I'm most comfortable in. I'm also going to move my little picture here so it's not covering up any of our tools. There we go. So you can still do this in Inkscape. So this is possible in Inkscape or Illustrator. It is also possible to do, well, not really. It's not really possible to do in Cricut Design Space because you have to edit the nodes. Maybe, with a lot of finagling, but I am not even going to touch that. It's like crazy. So this is definitely a node manipulation thing. And just to be clear, nodes are, we discussed them, but I'll show them here to you too. So let's zoom in here. That's the angle. No, that's my zoom. No, what am I doing here? Sorry, let me get out my keyboard. I like to use my keyboard. I find it much faster. All right, so I have the direct selection tool, right? And you can see here, sorry, here we go. These little dots, these are called nodes, right? So we're going to actually be modifying them a bit. So let me show you how this works. So this file, by the way, I'm providing this for you. So you can do this exact rows to learn the technique if you want. This is in your workshop area. All right. So first, we want to open up our shape. You do not have to use this rose shape. You can do this with any shape you want. So that's clear. It can be a letter or it can be a pretty picture or whatever. It just needs to be something like this, it needs to have those cut lines that are wide enough, okay? So you want to open up your shape. And the next step is to duplicate it, right? We're going to keep a copy of that. And I can just copy and paste it. Now I'm going to share some tips as we go along, right? This is how I design. You could just copy and paste it, but did you know that if you hold down the Option key in Illustrator and Cricut Design Space and in many programs, it will actually duplicate. You hold down the Option key, and you click and drag, and it makes a copy, right? Option key on the keyboard. Just to be clear, right here, Option key, right? Okay, you see that right here. All right, so I'm going to hold down the Option key. I'm going to click and drag my rows, and super fast, easy duplication. So, and then it works in Cricut Design Space too. All right, so we've duplicated it. We've dragged it off to the side. All right, so our next step then is, make sure I got all this. So our next step is to select the rows, and we're going to go to the Object menu, Compound Path, and release it. So we're going to open up the rows. So we go to the Object menu, and we go to Compound Path, right here, right here, Compound Path, and then we're going to release it, right? So that means it's all those the parts that are sort of removed, that like the outline, it's going to fill in, and I'll do it right now so you see, right? So it's all, the lines are all still there, but they're no longer removed from them. It's kind of, that's not a very technical way of saying it, but you can see what it looks like, right? All right, so now we want to select the outer shape and change its color to white so that we can see these different layers. So, or maybe I'll do light pink. There we go. So now you can see that we've got, by using the Compound Path, we've got our outer shape, it's still there, and we have our, now each of our petals is separate, okay? So the next step then is to, we're going to select everything, and we're going to deselect the outer shape. So I'm going to just drag around it. I don't want to go up to the menu and choose select all because I have other things on my canvas like copies, right? So we just drag a bounding box around it to select everything. And then I want to deselect the outer shape, right? So I can just hold down the Shift key on my keyboard and click on the outer shape. And now it's not selected. That's the easiest way. That's how I always do it, right? I could, of course, if I wanted to, just sit here and go click, 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 click. Right? I can do this. I might not get them all. It's much more reliable to select everything and then deselect that outer one, just so you know. I'm trying to share some of my workflow tips as I go along because I find that it's helpful for you to see how I work. All right, so now we're going to offset, which you have learned to do in multiple ways now. So we're going to go to the Object menu, and we're going to go to Path, and we're going, oops, there we go, Path, and we're going to go to Offset Path, which you saw. So let me drag this over so it's not in the way. Now we want to do a negative offset. All right, so we actually type in the minus sign, all right, and we're going to do 0.06, right? And this can be round, it can be mitered, whatever you want. You can always play with these things, right? But negative 0.06 is going to be our offset path. You can, for this example, you can, of course, do less, but honestly, it's going to get really hard to see. You can see right here on the screen what it's going to look like. It gives you a preview because I clicked this preview button, right? So you can see that if it was any smaller than that, it would barely be noticeable. So you could go bigger, right? So just keep that in mind as you're designing. All right, and then click OK. So now we have that, and I'm going to change our new result to yellow. So there we go. So now we can see all of our new layers, right? Okay, so now we need to do our node manipulation. Now this is when the Illustrator software becomes very important, right? So we're actually going to go in here and we're going to move the nodes at the center of each petal to match the original shape so we can get that infinity mirror effect. So I'm going to zoom in here so we can see better. And what we want to do is go to our direct selection tool, which looks like the arrow, the cursor button, cursor tool, sorry, the cursor tool that's filled in, which is this one right here. Yeah. Not this one. This is the regular selection tool, but the direct selection tool. This is the one that lets you get in there and get more detail. And now we are going to click, hold, and drag each of these nodes so that they're moved in. Oops, I have everything selected there. We don't want that. It just didn't undo. And I clicked outside, so I wasn't selecting everything. All right, there we go. So I want to move these nodes so they are now up here where the originals were, just like this. And we're going to go around and we're going to do all of them like this. So it's a little time consuming, but the results are really well worth it. And it can be really relaxing if you're into this kind of thing. Not for everybody, but I find tasks like this, oops, there'll be a lot of undoing. I find tasks, in fact, I need to get a little closer. If you're ever having an issue, like with something, just get in there closer. You can get pretty close. Right now, I'm noticing that this line right here doesn't quite match this one, and I want it to curve better. So you can use these handles here to change the curve on them. There we go. So I find tasks like this to be very relaxing, especially when I'm having a stressful day. In fact, something about me that some people know, but not most, but might not surprise you when you learn, is that when I am overwhelmed and just, one of those days where I'm making all the, oops, let's pick that back up here, making all the decisions and all the tough things, what I like to do is graphic work. I will start doing projects and I can get relaxed almost instantly. And it's this kind of thing. It's something I already know how to do. And it's, perhaps someone might call it tedious, but I actually find it really, really relaxing to just sit here and Photoshop or make an SVG or something. Perhaps that's why there are so many designs. I don't know. Perhaps. It's just really rewarding. I get to see, something change in front of my face, and then I have something when I'm all done. And sometimes it's just, a photo for a blog post that I'm doing, and sometimes it's an SVG. So, but you can see here, I'm just moving all of these nodes in here. So that, and then of course, maybe zoom out a little bit. You can see here, I'm using the center of the rows to move them in because we're going for that infinity mirror effect. I don't know if there's a technical term for this thing that we're doing. So I'm making up that name. But like you've seen it when you have like two mirrors and they're reflecting each other, and you can keep seeing and everything kind of just keeps getting a little smaller and smaller. That's the idea. So anyways, we're moving all these things in here, and if you want to change the curves a little bit, you can. And on this one here in the center, we're going to, bring it inward towards the center of the rows. Oops, that's the wrong handle there. Let's get in there closer. Whenever you're struggling, get in there. Also, you can see all the mistakes if you get in there closer, and you can fix them. Oftentimes when I'm working with nodes to this degree, I come in afterwards really close so I can see what I'm doing. I can see I'm making a mistake there. The good news is that it's not going to be like this layer is going to be underneath. So it's not the end of the world if I screw it up too bad, right? And also I'm zoomed in really close. Probably no one will ever see this. All right. So now I got to fix this one here. Okay. Let's keep going. I promise I'm not going to do this for every layer. I'm going to give you the idea so that you can then do it if you want to. All right, so this one here. So everything is just coming in towards the center. There we go. And and just showing you how these nodes work, I think is useful too. And I'm just clicking and dragging them just so that that's clear. Sometimes you have to bring your handles in so your curve is a little less, right? But I'm really close. It's probably not that important, really. It probably isn't. There's so many things you can't see. Like, even though our cutting machines are so exact. It's really quite scary sometimes. Like if you make mistakes, it will replicate your mistakes. But at some point, you're just dealing with something that's so small that it's not that big of a deal. Okay, we're almost done. Let's bring this one up. Bring these in here. And in fact, I want to also share a little tip here while I'm in Illustrator. This is when I get done, I'm going to share something that I use all the time, and it's not available in Inkscape, unfortunately. I haven't found anything that's the equivalent of it, but it's might be one of my secret weapons. So there's a tool in Illustrator that I love. It's over here, and it's under the shaper tool. It's like hidden, and it's called the smooth tool. I use this a lot because you can see my lines are not crazy smooth here. So you can switch it to this smooth tool. You go back to direct selection and you select something, and then you click on that, and then you can drag the smooth tool along the edge and it smooths it out for you. So you don't have to be like, you don't have to get all of your curves right. You can use a smooth tool to do it for you. So I do that a lot because I don't consider myself an artist. I consider myself, or even an illustrator, I consider myself a graphic designer, and it's like a different thing. I really think it is. All right, so let's get all these in here. Almost done, just 2 more nodes to go. It's close. There we go. All right, let's see if we got them all. Yes, okay, so now you can see that all of the yellow parts, that the edge that's closest to the center is now brought in towards the center of your shape, whatever it is, right? And you can decide if you want to do it different than this, you can, of course. All right, so now that we have brought all the nodes in to the center, we're going to delete the original shape. So that's all of the red. So we're going to click, and I'm sure I'll make a mistake, and that's okay. That's what the undo button is for. I'm trying to select just the red, and I'm going to select all of the red here. Let's see if I can just manage to get just through. Oh, see, I almost messed that one up. Here we go. 2 more. Yeah, 1 more. There we go. So I've selected all the red. Now we're going to select all of this. You can see how now those lines are thicker, but it's thicker in a different way, right? So we're going to select everything now. We're going to go to the Object menu. We're going to choose Compound Path right here, and we're going to do Make. And oops, I forgot one. I forgot the one. So I'm going to undo. You can see here right here in the center how it filled in. So I'm going to undo, and I am going to, it must be under this. So let me give you another tip. And when you have all these layers, it can be tricky. So you could go in and you could hide the layer, sure. But like I like to work quickly, right? So if you right click on your mouse, you get a little contextual menu. Down here under Select, you can do Next Object or below right here. You see that? If I do that, it selects the one below, and I can delete that without having to hide or go find or anything. And now when I select everything and I go to Object, Compound Path, Make, it worked, right? So a little tip there for if you do that. I don't know if it's possible in Inkscape. It might be. So sometimes these things don't, correspond, but sometimes they do. Sometimes they have different names, right? Everything does something a little different. All right, so now, of course, like I've been telling you, you want to make a copy of this. So I'm just going to hold down my Option key and drag this off to the side. Right, there we go. All right, so now we're going to align the original layer over the new layer to see our work. So let's zoom out. Here's our original layer, this red one. Let's bring it over here. And we can select everything. And I just click here and here to get it aligned. And there we go. So you can see, now let's zoom in here. So you can see how, oops, we have done our offset, but it's only offsetting at the edges. Isn't that cool? So this is a more subtle technique, but it does produce a really cool effect. So I'm not going to do all the layers. You don't want to watch me play with nodes all day, but I will show you. I have this file I'm sharing with you. It's in your workshop area. and you can see exactly how these each of these layers is done, right? So here is our starting layer. I just had changed it red. And then this is when we added the 0.06 inch offset. And as we scroll over, it's got the whole progress in here for you. Here it is with all the nodes moved in. And then here it is when we made our compound path. And here is the layer 2 that's complete. That's what we just did. And then to make additional layers, you just repeat the process with that new layer that you made. So there's layer 3, there's layer 4, there's layer 5, there's layer 6, and here it is all finished. Zoom in on that so you can see. Isn't that cool? And so when you're done, let me switch over so you can see, you can make something as beautiful as this. So see how all of the layers come in, right? It's really cool. And of course you can, but I want you to note that it's coming into the sunflower and the rose. So it's like you're really looking into it. I think it's really cool. So that's how you do that if you would like to try a more advanced technique.